When growth stalls, most leaders reach for surface fixes like new campaigns, a sharper sales deck, even new hires. But the real issues are often deeper, such as misaligned systems, broken handoffs, or unreliable data. That's why we built the Growth Readiness Score. In just 5 minutes, you'll get a clear score across 4 critical areas of your revenue operations and see how you stack up against your peers with benchmark data. Tap the link in the show notes to get started. It's quick, insightful, and often reveals issues leaders don't expect.
Effective enablement for me is an interconnected system that is supporting different functions. So what I mean by that, typically someone thinks enablement is sales enablement. You'll see Gartner Magic Quadrant, Forrester Waves, there's the term revenue enablement, which plays to the idea that it's to impact all of your revenue levers. And for me, enablement is the Rosetta Stone of a company. And what do I mean by that? Your services team, they've got metrics that matter that comp is tied to. Utilization, margin, billability. Success team might be all about renewals, adoption, churn rates, net retention, whatever. Sales, it's usually bookings, new logos, expansion. Whatever the case may be, every group has its own priorities. Enablement acts as the Rosetta Stone to tie the metrics of the company, the vision, right, to the individual business unit metrics that are important. It's the translation engine of the corporate strategy down into the action of the different functions.
You're listening to RevOps Champions, a podcast created for B2B leaders to help you align your people, streamline your processes, trust your data, and leverage technology in order to grow your business. Welcome back to the RevOps Champions podcast. I'm very happy to have with me today Hayden Stafford. He's the president and chief revenue officer at Seismic, where he leads the global go-to-market organization across sales, customer success, partnerships, and professional services. With more than 25 years of experience in go-to-market leadership at companies including Microsoft, Salesforce, IBM, and Pegasystems, Hayden brings deep revenue operations expertise and a track record of driving growth at scale. Hayden, welcome to the RevOps Champions podcast.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for inviting us and hosting this today. Delighted to be here with you in this midwinter day that we're both going through.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a fun conversation. So, Hayden, you've led major go-to-market teams at Microsoft, Salesforce, IBM, Pegasystems, and now Seismic. What early experiences shaped the leader you've become?
Wow. Look, I started in services. One of the companies that left out, I was actually there for a while, was Ernst & Young. I think that grounding in consulting and the consultative approach to selling and revenue played a major role. Learning by listening, engaging as a team, that's kind of at the core of where I sat. The other piece was getting a good grounding at a large company that really put a lot of emphasis on discipline around forecasting and revenue operations and things of that nature, and just being a good leader and being a good employee. I was at IBM, and that was back in the day when they had big training programs, whatnot. That fiscal discipline, that commitment to the company with my word is my honor and it's what I'm going to deliver. Those two things came together at an important point in my life, which was where I was starting. That played a major role because I think as you grow within your career, what you say you're going to do, you better do it, and then deliver what you said you would do becomes all the more important, particularly in public companies.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I think one of the other things that I've learned from people who've had that sort of consulting experience, and especially if you've been successful and then gone on from there, they seem to have a higher emotional intelligence, which seems to come in handy as well, both internally and externally.
I agree. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I've seen all sorts of leaders. I've seen the intimidation leaders. I've seen the inspiration leaders, the best that have that 50-50 split between EQ and IQ. You know, I'm always impressed by high IQ folks. They tend to not be quite as good on the kind of the people development and whatnot. But I'm a strong believer in that as well.
Yeah. Awesome. So Hayden, you've spoken about the tension between fast-paced sales environments and the structure that finance teams require. What was the most difficult example of this tension in your career, and how did you resolve it?
So many examples. I mean, look, fundamentally, the role of like a CFO and a CRO are a bit at odds from the standpoint, my goals, what I'm looking to do is in the here and now, taking down what's in front of us, delivering for the quarter. Of course, we have a longer term vision and commitment to the business. Whereas on the flip side, your CFO is thinking about their LRP, their long range plan, and how to deliver on those commitments. And when they're approving things or declining things, it's based on how that works within the longer range plan. So there is a natural tension. I
Yep.
think for me, Brendon, it's anytime you get into a downturn. That's where it really starts to show. I've gone through two major ones in my career. I led a big chunk of Wall Street for IBM during the big global financial crisis, 2007 through like 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say that the last 3 years, 4 years have been a bit of a downturn, a little different. Back in 2007, it was a wall shut, a door shutting down, and everything stopped. What we've just gone through over the last 4 years is a little bit more on, off, on, off. And so it's during those times when the fundamentals of the business change, the behavior of your customers change. That's when it's most acute. And you need to be able to sense and respond based on that. I met the CCO, the chief customer officer of one of the world's largest shipping companies. I
Mm-hmm.
met him in June of this past year, right after the tariffs all came. You want to talk about a difficult job is sensing and responding to an immediate, like unforeseeable influence within your business and needing to react to it. Don't ask me what he did because I don't know all the details. But
Mm-hmm.
when these tariffs came, man, it was suddenly get stuff out the door before the tariffs hit. The ability to sense and respond to that signal that differentiates success from failure, and that alignment with the CFO that, hey, things are a little different right now. Let's make sure that I'm set up for success while I mutually agree to your success in the long run.
Yeah, yeah, really good. Okay, well let's jump forward now and into Seismic, right? So because of what you do at Seismic, you and your team talk a lot about enablement, hundreds of times a day. How do you explain what enablement is for anyone listening not familiar with it in the business and revenue context?
So, I always use this saying all the time. It's a bit overused. If you ask 10 people what enablement is, you'll get 15 answers. It truly is different to everyone, right? For some,
Yeah.
it's training, it's onboarding, it's the annual certifications. For others, it's a heavy hand in what you say, what you do, how you respond, what you share, what you don't, and of course, training. For
Hmm.
me, for us, what enablement is giving the right context for the right customer at the right time, right?
Hmm.
And making sure that the right content has that context for the right customer at the right time, and doing so within the flow of work. So enablement isn't, here you go, here's our new products, we're launching it, take all this training, read this stuff, and you're on your own. Instead, think about a new product launch and being able to launch that and seeing how the team is behaving, how they're reacting, what they're saying in meetings, what's the response from customers, where are they getting tripped up, where are they getting excited, and using that as positive reinforcement to bring back into the system to
Hmm.
ensure that things go smoothly with that launch. The number one failure of a company, and the world is wrought with it, is when they launch a major product. A lot of R&D goes into it, a lot of investments, and they launch it. And then at the end of the year, how are we doing? I'm being a little facetious. They don't wait till the end of the year. But it's typically looking at a lot of lagging indicators that indicate the success of that new product or that new sales play or that competitive campaign. True enablement, transformational enablement, is when you have a program set up that the entire company, the product team, your CEO, the CRO, the head of enablement, the marketing team, are able to see more of the leading indicators. How
Hmm.
is the engagement going? How are customers taking the new messaging or the new product? And being able to tweak what you're doing based on the signals coming back. That to me is enablement. Yes, there's training. Yes, there's content. And yes, there's customer engagement and all those people, all those different processes. But it's
Hmm.
doing it within the flow of work and being able to react in real time. That's true enablement.
So in the context of revenue operations, obviously there's there's a very strong relationship between enablement and revenue operations. But
Oh yeah.
as you were sort of giving your explanation of enablement there, what you're touching on, and that we see a lot also at Dynamico as we're doing implementations and optimizations of tech stacks and the processes that drive them for our clients. Change management is a big component. And you could probably ask the same question about, well, what is change management? A lot
Yeah.
of people say, well, it's training. How do you, I guess, talk about enablement through the lens of revenue operations,
Yeah.
one, and then how do you think about it maybe through the lens of change management?
All right. I'm going to actually take it back a step. What I think we've all seen is the rise of the title CRO. Look, I'm one. You know, 10 years ago, did I aspire to be a chief revenue officer? No, it didn't exist. It truly didn't exist. Why has the title come around? What has happened over the last 10 years that has seen mass proliferation of the role? There are many levers to revenue. There's sales, there's services, there's customer success, there's channel and partners. Heck, there's even marketing. The role of the CRO is customer buying behaviors, and the pattern of buying is different. And therefore, every revenue engine, every one of those levers needs to be optimized and working with one another in order to achieve your end outcome.
Yeah.
You can only do that when you have a well-plumbed revenue system, if you will, right? Like the system of revenue, it's not just I have a sales booking. It's my success and support team that's supporting you with an open issue, recognizing an opportunity of a lead that then efficiently gets picked up by the sales team, and so on and so on. We cover a number of those examples. That is
Yeah.
not possible without a RevOps team or sales ops or CS ops, but I'll call it RevOps, that has the right plumbing and wiring within the system to be able to do it. So I think of it kind of, Brendon, as like, you've got a revenue strategy that defines the intent of what you're trying to do, but then there's the revenue system that determines the outcomes, and the outcomes are growth or margin preservation or anything along those lines. Without this system that is wired and led by the CRO, but is operated by a plugged in RevOps team, then the team won't have the insights and the observations that they can have to react to downturns, as we talked about, tariffs or whatnot. Now, where change management comes into that is, I talked about at the very front of this conversation, I talked about EQ and IQ. I started to hear the term AQ. I don't know if you've heard that. That's the adaptability quotient. And, with the advent of AI and whatnot, are teams able to adapt to the sudden change of the way they run their business, how they use new tools, or more importantly, how I sense and respond to the changes and the signals that are coming back from our revenue engines? To drive effective change management, first of all, you got to have the signals that give you the idea that change is coming before it's too late. But then you've got to have the people that have that EQ, IQ, AQ, but then you've got to have the systems that recognize the response and provide the right training, the right content. You might be selling one product, but the macro environment changed. We've got to snap change and sell this product. That to me is the plumbing that works, right? The signals coming from your RevOps teams, your leaders that are kind of driving and dictating the direction and pace, but then the people that are going to take the change and not be stuck in their ways, and then the content, the assets that helps them do it. Long-winded answer, I apologize. One of the things in podcasts is about being succinct, but it was a really good question that I think is difficult to unpack.
No, and I love the way you did it, because this is essentially how we've been doing it for the last year. We do technology implementations and then maintain and optimize them over time as our clients' businesses scale and grow. And we need to figure out how to help them make these decisions strategically, and not just buying a shiny object that they thought was going to solve all their business problems.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how we've done it in 2025. We said there's 3 layers to a successful tech stack, which for us, currently the CRM is still at the center of that tech stack, and then you have everything else that the RevOps team needs to support and enable whoever it is, marketing, sales, service, etc. In order to do that, we need to start at the top, and the top is the CRO. So what
and
is
the strategy?
Exactly. So the leadership team comes up with the strategy. The CRO is responsible and accountable for making sure that that strategy is made real in a given period of time, whether it's 90 days, a year, or a longer period of
Yeah.
time. And from the CRO, it then goes to RevOps. And what that allows us to do is just, kind of like we're doing, is like you're able to zoom out and realize what's important before you zoom in onto the
You
things
are,
that have.
Brendon, you are so right. Like, I think about the sales operations team back in the day when I was on Wall Street with the global financial crisis. It was there to purely give you the data set, to review your pipeline, to look at, standard data. I call it reporting the news. Where I'm seeing RevOps, I mean, we've just hired several new folks within our RevOps team.
Mhm.
You're looking for that team. It's evolved such that it is a strategic part. The RevOps team is on my leadership team because they're not reporting the news, they're making the news, right? Because they're pointing out areas within that revenue system that might be failing or falling behind.
Yeah.
And so, for me, that connection, they don't have to report to me. They can report to the CFO, whatnot.
Yeah.
But the alignment between your revenue leaders and that revenue operations team has to be true. It has to be trusting, because alignment breaks when the complexity outpaces the structure. And if you're adding too much complexity in, things break. Last thing I
Yeah.
would say on that is, typical default for a lot of RevOps team is to look at the lagging indicators, the KPIs, right? The key performance indicators. I would ask every revenue ops leader to help me identify what are I call them TLIs, transformative leading indicators, that are the things that are the precursors to the KPIs. When we've done that, that's when the RevOps and revenue teams are walking hand in hand.
Yeah, it's so weird because right before you said that, the note that I made was that if RevOps has leading indicators, to your point, they need to be part of the informing leadership about what's happening in real time, so that everybody can adapt and adjust.
That's right. I speak to and it's always been this way. I work with our head of RevOps more. I connect with them, Slack, email, as well as calls, more than any one of my direct reports.
Yeah,
Says
that's
a lot
awesome.
about the importance of the relationship.
Yeah, well, and the importance of the function, right? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
really good. Love it. So you kind of started going there. So at Microsoft, your team drove significant revenue growth for Dynamics,
Yeah.
right? And so what unlocked that level of transformation? You started talking about how what we've been talking about for the last couple of minutes is what essentially drives transformation. So what unlocked that level of transformation for you there?
First of all, you need to have the commitment. It had been, and I can say this because I'm a redhead and I am a stepchild, actually. It was the ugly redheaded stepchild of Microsoft. It was the business applications group that talks to front office people. Honestly, it was a satellite. And our office was way off campus and whatnot. They didn't understand it. Right. It was
Uh-huh.
largely a CIO/CTO sale where you're counting headcount and licenses for our office and whatnot. So you
Uh-huh.
need the intent. And the big catalyst was Satya Nadella. It's no coincidence that the
Uh-huh.
Dynamics business took off at a time. I joined 4 weeks after Satya took over as CEO.
Oh
He had
wow.
actually ran Dynamics in his past. He understood the value and the
Uh-huh.
recognition that the front office applications are throwing off data, that coupled with the productivity applications and the data that throws off that someday is going to be hugely valuable. So the intent was incredible.
Uh-huh.
For us, the big move was the decision to get more balance. First of all, we had to build a better product. Of course, do you have a good product? Does the product have the right fit? Is it matched for the market? But then it was a massive shift, Brendon, from a partner-led, mostly mid-market motion to where it concluded, but not concluded, it's still going, when I left, which was largely enterprise direct sales motion.
Uh-huh.
So that transfer took a little bit of time, but for us, we played with incentives. But most importantly, what we started to do for the partners was they largely had their own sales team doing their own thing. We built a marketing engine and we built a support engine that was building the visibility or the intelligence of where the opportunities were. And with Dynamics becoming more and more of an integral part of the corporate strategy, the
Uh-huh.
partners got in line. So data, we were providing them a lot of information around customers, customer intent, customer signals. And we started working with them where there wasn't friction between the partner team and the sales team. And then the lift took off. Now, a lot of other things, product, of course, and as I said, leadership. But when you use the data to your advantage to help somebody else, and it becomes a win-win for each other, and we built incentive plans and incentives for the partners that helped. That
Hmm.
was the escape velocity for us, was taking our own data, using their data to build a view of what's possible.
Yeah, that's
It was it was a hell of a time, Brendon, because we were an unheard of distant fourth or fifth CRM, mostly mid-market ERP, undoubtedly now number two in the CRM market.
mhm,
They don't want to be and never will be number one in the CRM space. And in
right.
the ERP space, you'd be stunned at the number of customers between SMB all the way up to enterprise. It's a very large number. And people don't know that, go with the Oracle or SAP core, but then the spokes, you've got Dynamics ERP everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's interesting that you talked about, and it's no coincidence that you started off there by talking about Satya, because everything starts with a leader who has the vision, the courage, the conviction, the commitment, right? Because with that, everything else becomes so much easier, right?
Yeah.
Especially someone as incredible as he is. Whenever something comes out of in an interview that he's with him, I always consume it because I learn every single time.
Yeah, and by the way, what is said in the press is true. I mean, I've had plenty of interactions there with him. It's true. But there's something else here that's really important. And I've actually stolen it from Microsoft. I changed it into my own way. They have their kind of guiding principles, and I have changed them into my own leadership principles.
Mm,
And they're different. It's clarity, empowerment, and accountability. That's the way I try to operate. And the most important piece of those three is the clarity element. And in
mhm,
leadership, if you're going to make any change, you're going to drive any new behaviors, reinforcing that clarity isn't just saying something over and over and having it super crystal clear. It's reinforcing clarity with other things like how you build your rhythm, your business rhythm, and your cadences, how you
mhm,
build your compensation plans that reinforce what you're trying to communicate. And,
mhm,
in his case, was we are going to act as one company operating as one as opposed to competing business units. In my case, it's we're going to go expand in this geo, or we're going to drive more, in financial services, building all the systems that support it. And then empowerment, clarity,
mhm.
empowerment, accountability.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer of what is going to resonate in Madrid, Spain, or Canberra, Australia, or Singapore, or
Mhm,
Peoria, Illinois. My team does. You empower them. Doesn't mean go off, do whatever you want to do. Work off the clarity of purpose, but stay within the guardrails and do it your way. But if
mhm,
you're empowering your team to do that, right, have strong accountability systems in place that are reinforced, again, by compensation, the way you conduct your rhythms. They're inextricably combined, but clarity around mission and purpose. And by the way, I plug for Seismic and what we do, enablement. What our former CEO had said, enablement really takes the ideas that are created on the whiteboard in the boardroom and brings it to the keyboard of the frontline troops
mhm.
and makes that translation possible and happen. So
Yeah.
clarity is incredibly important, and translating that into action is even more so.
Right. Which if you kind of boil that down, and which you did a really good job of now, is it really comes down to its leadership, right? If you have the right leaders who can provide that clarity and empowerment and accountability, then everything becomes so much easier downstream, and
Thousand
it
percent.
yeah, drives all the right decisions. Yeah.
Anytime I've been faced with a challenge or a big pivot, I will focus on the skills and competencies of the frontline management, or actually a couple layers up. That's where you'll get your biggest scale function as opposed to driving, skills and competency programs for the individuals. Yes, you need to do that. But if you don't have the right leaders,
Yeah. Yeah. That's so like our framework here for revenue operations is people, process, data, and technology, because I mean, and we learned that through trial and error primarily over the last 7 or 8 years, where if you didn't have the right people, which includes leadership and all the things that come with leadership and people, then all the decisions that happen downstream are potentially completely misinformed.
yeah.
Anyway,
And
so I want to get
you can build the business systems that reinforce that. just makes it so obvious. You look left, you look right, and it's the mission, the vision is right there in your face. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's simple, but it's hard.
Yeah.
But
It's not easy.
again, just finding the right people, I guess,
Yeah.
is what it comes down to. But let's get back into. So you describe enablement as a strategic engine rather than a training function. So how do you, which I think is a really good point, and I think I want to re-emphasize that. But how do you define effective enablement, and what are the non-negotiable elements?
Yeah. Effective enablement. Okay, it's a great question. Effective enablement for me is an interconnected system that is supporting different functions. So, what I mean by that, typically someone thinks enablement is sales enablement. You'll see Gartner Magic Quadrant, Forrester Waves, there's the term revenue enablement, which plays
Mhm,
to the idea that it's to impact all of your revenue levers. And
mhm,
for me, enablement is the Rosetta Stone of a company. And what do I mean by that? Your services team, they've got metrics that matter that comp is tied to utilization, margin, billability. Success team might be all about renewals, adoption, churn rates, net retention, whatever. Sales, it's usually bookings, new logos, expansion, whatever the case may be. Every group has its own priorities. Enablement acts as the Rosetta Stone to tie the metrics of the company, the vision, right? Um, to the individual business unit metrics that are important. It's the translation engine of the corporate strategy down into the action of the different functions. If
mm,
you have built a system that is reinforced from onboarding a new employee to reaching tenure, launching new products, entering new markets, taking on new competitors, it is a system that involves training, it involves content, it involves customer education, customer engagement, and then telemetry around it, right? So that's where it
mm,
comes back to the Rosetta Stone. It's not just this person's doing well or that person's not doing well. It's your marketing team knowing what's working. I mean, how many companies have a PMM, right? Your product management team, where they're measuring the individual success of the assets each one of them are creating vis-a-vis impact on revenue. There aren't
mhm,
many. That's transformational enablement. Your marketing team is plugged in and knows the attribution of their work to revenue. Customers, right? The buying process is almost all the way done 80%, 70%, whatever the case may be. You have that moment to make that matters. Are the
mhm,
signals and messages that your marketing team getting into the content that you're engaging, and do you see that they're engaging with your content and you're using that to inform your next engagement? That's enablement. So it's so far beyond just education.
mm,
It's bringing into your business rhythms, your revenue rhythms, insertion points of data and activities of how to be better when you're trying to engage a customer or grow your revenue. Um,
mhm,
I just dispelling the myth that enablement is training is I'm kind of on a mission to do that. And it's not just content. It's about making your sellers, making your team more efficient and not having them have to go to different places to get things. One gearbox to run your revenue engine.
mm. Yeah, that's really
Lots
interesting
to chew
because
on there, Brandon.
no, that was awesome. And one of the things that clicked for me there was so I've been doing this now for 7 or 8 years, where I have an annual theme, and my theme this year, I, you know, I. I've been using it internally, but I haven't used it externally much because it's a bit of a mouthful, but
Yeah.
it's deliberate translation.
Yeah.
And
My Rosetta Stone right there.
it was like I hadn't thought about it from the context of what we do from a RevOps perspective, which again, to your earlier points, I mean, RevOps is a big part of enabling sales, in our case, sales, marketing, and customer service teams,
Yeah.
and everybody else who benefits from that clarity that comes from a really well-oiled RevOps engine. But again, that idea that they're translating the signals, the data that they're getting from and a continuously evolving business, both internally and externally, because
Always.
your customers are evolving, you're evolving because you're adding people, your customer behavior is changing. So again, who's picking up those signals and who's translating them first of all, and eventually it's going to get to the CRO and the CEO to make decisions, right?
That's right. And we talked about the RevOps leader and the CRO or sales leader being connected. I immediately know that a company is well ran when I see that the enablement team has a seat at the table with the leadership. And they're not there at the table because they're talking about number of courses taken or number of calls made with the buzzword. They're there because they're measured on the metrics like lift of pipeline or accelerated close rates, productivity, efficiency gains of your sales team, because the
Mm-hmm.
metrics that they measure themselves against are the ones that matter for the company. There's one other thing that about enablement that's really important. It's not a separate thing that you go do. It is embedded. We talked about it a little bit before. It's embedded within the workflow of how your teams operate.
Mm-hmm.
Seismic is an application. You can go to it. And we have plenty of companies that do that. There are many companies, they don't even know they're using Seismic. It's like an OEM white label that sits within Salesforce where they
Mm-hmm.
go get their content that is predictive and on point, has the right context. Um, that's really important because when it's within the workflow and everybody is looking at the same metrics that matter, then you have alignment. And for me,
Mm-hmm.
alignment is where it all happens. That's where you get all the efficiency and lift out of the team. As organizations scale, as they have to grow quickly, I think about all these AI companies that are like growing like gangbusters. As
Yeah.
organizations scale, alignment becomes, less about intention and more about execution. It's that shared language, shared data, and shared accountability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So you've now opened the door, Hayden, to AI.
Yeah. How,
I was
how
trying to
could
see
we get through a call without that, right?
exactly. So Seismic, like so many other companies in similar spaces, have invested heavily in AI. Um, how should but let's sort of again zoom out again from there. I don't want to get too into the weeds, but how should revenue leaders decide where to apply AI for the greatest impact right now?
Phenomenal question. A lot of hype, a lot of buzz, and you roll out AI and people go, "Ooh, we're going to do it." And you see a spike in activity and then it falls off. The way we look at it, frankly, is the most successful AI initiatives, they begin and end around clear business problems or clear business initiatives or areas of improvement.
Mm,
Things like onboarding speed, deal execution, the follow
mhm,
up that you have from engagement with customers, seller productivity. You go target those business problems rather than experimentation for its own sake. AI delivers value most when it's embedded directly into the workflows that you're doing. Give you a perfect example. I'm getting ready for that big meeting with the
mhm,
customer. It's the big closing meeting. And I haven't sold this product before. I'm hoping I'm going to do it. And if I do it, I'm going to make President's Club. You're going to spend a lot of time digging around, trying to get brushed up. If you don't have Seismic or a true revenue enablement system, maybe you're going to dig through your old notes. You're going to ask friends what was said in various calls with the customer. AI is there to help tell you what happened in the last call.
mhm,
What were the open items? What were they comfortable with? Where do you need to dig? AI is going to then help you prepare the deck, not just the agenda, but the deck, the talk track, the workflow.
mhm,
AI is going to then make you practice with it. So I'm going to practice, and it knows how to practice me because it's listened to all my prior calls. AI is going to listen during the meeting and going to make recommendations of, we're hearing a lot about competitive pricing. Maybe you want to talk about, pricing. And then the follow up summary for you, summary for your manager, but most important, well, actually, before I get to most important, build you a digital sales room with the content you said you would send them, immediately sent. It's in there.
mhm,
But the most important piece, AI enablement, Brendon, has listened to your calls. It's listened to all of your calls, and it recognizes that you don't have a lot of confidence with competitive positioning. You really don't know the value proposition of that product and you talk too fast. So then you take training, recommended things to go read. And what does that do? It takes away the need for the manager to have to scale and listen to a bunch of calls and join calls for each person to help them get better. We actually have a customer that had an average span of control for the frontline sales manager of 7, one manager to 7 people.
Mm.
Using kind of that call listening, the call prep, call listening, call follow-up, they're now 1 to 12 because the manager is able to now focus on the moments that matter as opposed to educating and coaching and developing each one of them because their AI companion is there. That's what I mean by being there in your flow of work. And for
Mm.
them, it was all about education and development of their front line, which are typically junior and career folks.
Yeah.
Pretty
So
cool stuff.
yeah, I mean, it's obviously going to be, life changing for a lot of us. So you've noted like a growing need for AI literacy across go-to-market teams.
Yeah.
What do you think that the next 2 to 3 years of AI adoption will look like for sales and customer success?
Well, first of all, I think it has already provided massive lift on the prospecting, like your BDRs, your SDRs, your sales development. Getting that message together that is personalized and relevant. By the way, if your enablement system is tied to CRM, you can personalize everything. So it's had a huge impact there. I think there
Yeah.
are 2 areas. This is kind of a seismic statement, but it's also my own statement. There are 2 areas where it's going to have the biggest impact is real time. We're already doing real time training. If you, Brendon, prefer listening, like podcasts, learning by listening, I prefer by reading or watching.
Mm.
AI will create training based on your own learning style. But where I
Mhm.
think it'll really take off is when it will be preemptive, proactive, building content. Like not just here's a document to a lot of other customers look like this one, felt like this one, so go share this. It'll be, we recommend this document built for you. And
Mm.
we are well down that path. AI right now, you go ask it to build something, it's not on brand, it might be a little wrong, and you've got to go clean everything up. But what about if it's already in your standard template, font, color? It's got all of your on point branding and messaging. That's one. So think
Mhm.
about all the time wasted building documents and presentation. That's number one. Second one is more of that in meeting, the meeting preparation, meeting execution, and meeting follow up. I think your average seller can probably handle 19 concurrent opportunities, some early stage, some late, typically 3 to 5 active in quarter deals. I think you will be able to see significant lift in scale of ability of an AE to do more deals because more of the back end work, the leg work, the heavy lifting, the administrivia is done
Mhm.
by AI. So you'll get huge productivity lift out of a smaller workforce with more revenue from them.
Yeah.
That that's the nirvana for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's which of course is I'm sure is attractive to not just to you and me, but anyone listening, right? So as we sort of start to wrap up here, for business leaders who want a more aligned and effective revenue org, what is the first change they should make on Monday morning?
Okay, if you're a CRO and you're not regularly meeting with your head of enablement, start that today. When you run your leadership meetings, in my case, you mentioned all the functions under my remit. Ensure that your RevOps leader and your enablement leader, and I'd add your marketing leader, are an equal part of your leadership team. The
Mm.
next piece is how ready am I or my colleagues to be able to answer the question when the CEO comes and says to me, that new product launch, how's it going? Are you able to answer that? Typically, most will go to their enablement person, say, how are we doing? How the team's doing? If you can't answer that question with a dashboard or two, make sure your enablement team is empowered, listened to, and by the way, measured on the metrics that you're measured on, not things like lessons taken. That's the biggest thing. That's where I would start. It's
Mhm.
crazy, Brendon. I'll meet CROs and we sell to CMOs, CROs, and COOs. Those are our primary buyers, and it is roughly a third, a third, a third. I'll
Mhm.
meet CROs that'll be like, I'm not interested in talking to go talk to my enablement person. I tell my team, stop the pursuit. Don't even go there because you might win the deal, but you're probably gonna churn in a year or
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
So that would be where I would focus
And
is
yeah.
uh,
And when you say leadership team, are you talking about your revenue leadership team or your leadership team, like the
no, my
company leadership?
revenue leadership
Yeah,
teams.
revenue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify.
I call it the GTML, the go to market leadership team. My
Okay.
services head, my sales engineering, my North America sales lead, so on, so on, so on.
Right. Right. Okay. Last question, and then I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for being here, Hayden. What other single learning from the last year is one you think either myself or our audience should consider if we aren't already aware of it?
What single thing over the last year that you might not be aware of that you need to be? That's the
Yeah,
essence.
that something that that really clicked for you, or that you're really focused on in 2026.
Yeah, it's gonna be awful, like the cliche of everybody. Is your team properly using AI? What I have learned, we launched Salesforce Agent Force, we launched Microsoft Copilot. A lot of fanfare, big spike in usage and adoption. Are they using it? And dig into why not. Because I guarantee you, for your listeners, the bulk of their team are not going to be, their teams aren't going to be using it.
Mm.
AI delivers the most value when it's embedded into the daily workflow and it's paired with the enablement, the activities that helps them act on insight, right? Not generating it, it's acting on insight. So that's what I would say is
Great.
go unpack why the team isn't using it, because the lift you're going to get is unreal, as we've seen, as I mentioned, in several parts of our business.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice.
Don't leave it up to somebody else would be my message. You go figure
Yes.
out why it's not being adopted at the rate that it is.
Yeah, and speak out when you see an opportunity. Yeah, that's really good advice. Hayden, thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to a conversation again sometime in the future, to learn more from you, and I'm sure our audience is going to be learning a lot too.
Hey, thank you, Brendon. Appreciate your time and thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.